Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons, and love are told. Go ahead and like, share with your friends, and subscribe. I trudged through the rain, the asphalt slick under my heels, my coat drenched, my hair plastered to my face. The wind clawed at me, tugging at my umbrella, making it useless against the storm. I could hardly believe the audacity of Andrew, or as I now thought of him, the man I thought I loved. Just a few hours ago, we had celebrated our anniversary. He had smiled, kissed my cheek, whispered empty words about our future. But every gesture had been a lie, a trap I had walked straight into. The truth had been gnawing at me for months, subtle hints, strange phone calls, inconsistencies in the bank statements, but I had pushed them aside, convincing myself I was imagining things. Tonight, the evidence was unavoidable, undeniable. Andrew had not just been having an affair. He had been siphoning money from our joint accounts, transferring it to offshore accounts under names I didn't recognize, forging signatures, manipulating numbers. And now, with the storm lashing down around me, he had left me stranded 37 miles from home, in what he called a lesson for daring to question him. I could hear the car door slam behind me, a final punctuation to his arrogance, and I wanted to scream at him, to make him see the coward he truly was. But there was no one to hear me except the rain and the occasional honk of distant vehicles. Every step I took away from the wet, isolated road felt like betrayal pressing against my chest. The irony was cruel. He wanted to teach me a lesson, but all he had done was confirm everything I had suspected. I pulled my coat tighter around me, shivering not just from the cold but from the realization that the life I had trusted had been built on lies. Each drop of rain felt like a testament to his deceit. I recalled the first signs I had noticed months ago that had seemed insignificant at the time. Andrew had been secretive about his laptop, sometimes disappearing into his home office for hours, claiming work emergencies. He had been defensive whenever I asked about financial statements or unexplained withdrawals. I had confronted him once, gently at first, then firmly when the denials became rehearsed and unnatural. He had laughed at me, a short, bitter laugh, and I had gone quiet, doubting myself instead of him. That laughter now echoed in my mind, twisted into something monstrous. He had thought he was clever, but he had underestimated me. 8 months of careful observation, subtle probing, and silent note-taking had armed me with knowledge he would never suspect I possessed. I had Marcus, my brother and a forensic accountant, digging through the numbers for irregularities, Valentina, an old friend with a mind for investigative research, tracking his movements, and Rebecca, a divorce attorney with a reputation for crushing the unprepared. Together, we had mapped every move he had made, every betrayal meticulously documented. The storm intensified as I stumbled forward, and I couldn't stop the bitter laugh that escaped my lips. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Andrew thought he had cornered me, thought he had the upper hand. He had expected me to panic, to grovel, perhaps even to beg. But I was laughing because, in his arrogance, he had provided the final piece of evidence I needed. His abandonment, in the middle of nowhere, in a torrential downpour, was the perfect capstone to the web of deceit he had spun. I could picture him back at the house, probably smug, thinking he had humiliated me, never imagining that this storm, both literal and metaphorical, would be the catalyst of his undoing. I finally spotted a dimly lit motel sign in the distance, a beacon against the blackened sky. I knew I needed shelter, a place to regroup, to solidify the final steps of the plan I had been preparing in secret. Checking into a room under my maiden name, I transformed from the wife he had thought he controlled into a traumatized stranger, vulnerable, frightened, convincing. Every detail mattered. The damp coat, the trembling hands, the tear-streaked face. I knew Andrew would never connect this persona with the woman he had humiliated. He would not suspect that the seemingly helpless wife he left behind was the same woman orchestrating his collapse. As I sat on the edge of the motel bed, dripping onto the floor, I allowed myself a moment to breathe. The reality of his betrayal, the sting of humiliation, the anger and the fear swirled inside me. A storm as fierce as the one raging outside. But within that storm, a plan solidified in my mind. Months of patient work, of silently collecting his misdeeds, had led to this moment. Every forged document, every offshore account transfer, every indiscretion had been cataloged. And now, with the storm as my accomplice, I would move forward unstoppable. I would not allow this betrayal to define me or break me. Instead, it would fuel a fire that Andrew could not extinguish. The hours passed slowly. I lay on the bed, listening to the rain pounding against the window, imagining the shock on Andrew's face when the court documents arrived, when federal agents appeared at his door, when his carefully curated world collapsed. Every detail I had gathered over months of meticulous planning, from his clandestine transfers to the evidence of his affair with a woman named Lena, was ready to be weaponized. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil inside me, a chaotic symphony that, in time, would give way to clarity and justice. Sleep eluded me, but I didn't need rest. My mind was alive with strategy, replaying conversations I would have with Rebecca, envisioning Marcus presenting the financial anomalies in court, picturing Valentina confronting Andrew with undeniable proof of his infidelity. I would appear trembling, disoriented, fragile, yet every step would be orchestrated, every move deliberate. Andrew would have believed he controlled the narrative, but the narrative was now mine. By the time dawn broke, a gray, rain-streaked light filtering through the blinds, I had reviewed every piece of evidence in my mind one final time. I was ready. Andrew's lesson for me had backfired spectacularly, providing the perfect stage for his exposure. He had underestimated me, dismissed me, treated me as if I were incapable of seeing the truth. But I had seen it all, and I was prepared to make sure that every misdeed, every betrayal, every attempt at control would be revealed, publicly, legally, and decisively. The storm had ended, leaving the air crisp, sharp, and expectant. It felt like a cleansing, a prelude to the reckoning Andrew would face. I dressed quickly, checking my appearance in the mirror, ensuring the trembling hands and haunted eyes were convincing. This was not just about revenge, it was about justice, about reclaiming my life from the man who had tried to erase me, financially, emotionally, and socially. Every step I took out of that motel, every calculated breath, was a declaration. I was no longer Amanda, the trusting, deceived wife. I was Amanda Rivers, orchestrator of a downfall he could never have foreseen. Outside, the world glistened with rain, the streets still wet, empty except for the occasional early commuter. I moved with purpose, a quiet storm of my own making, every droplet of rain that fell on me now feeling like a harbinger of what was to come. Andrew's lesson for me was complete, but it was he who would learn the harshest lessons in the days to come. By the time I returned to the city, the storm had left the streets glistening, wet but alive with movement. I moved with calm precision, keeping my eyes down, my mind focused. Every step I took was part of a carefully choreographed plan, and every breath reminded me that I was no longer the woman who trusted blindly. Andrew believed he had left me powerless, stranded, fearful. He had no idea that his reckoning was already in motion, orchestrated over 8 months with meticulous care and ruthless precision. I thought about Marcus, my brother, who had spent countless late nights cross-checking bank statements, tracing every illicit transfer Andrew had made, building a trail of evidence that was impossible to deny. He had become my silent analytical strength, the backbone of the strategy that would dismantle Andrew's carefully constructed facade. Valentina, with her sharp eye for detail and natural intuition, had done wonders tracking Andrew's movements and compiling proof of his affair with Lena. She had photographs, messages, receipts, evidence Andrew had foolishly left behind, assuming I would never connect the dots. And then there was Rebecca, the divorce attorney whose reputation for winning the unwinnable had preceded her. She had seen countless men like Andrew, men who believed charm and money could protect them, and she had relished the opportunity to bring him down. Together, the three of them had created a net I was now ready to pull tight around him. The abandonment, the cruel final act of his arrogance, had been the missing link. I checked into a modest hotel downtown under my maiden name, presenting myself as the frightened, disoriented wife of a man who had left me to the mercy of the storm. The trembling hands, the damp hair, the haunted eyes, they were convincing. When I spoke to the receptionist, my voice quivered. When I called the front desk for assistance, my tone was fragile and uncertain. I was playing a role that was critical to the success of the plan. Outside my window, the city hummed with life, oblivious to the drama unfolding behind the closed curtains. Inside, I reviewed the digital files, the photographs, the financial records, and the recorded conversations. Every piece of evidence fits into place like the final strokes of a painting. Andrew had underestimated me at every turn, and now that mistake would cost him everything. By evening, Rebecca had joined me in the room, her briefcase heavy with documents that could ruin Andrew's life. We spoke in hushed tones, going over the emergency court filing one last time. She reassured me that the temporary injunction would be granted, that Andrew's assets would be frozen almost immediately, and that the evidence we had gathered was airtight. Marcus and Valentina were coordinating with federal authorities, ready to present the financial crimes alongside the personal betrayals. Each move had been anticipated, each contingency accounted for. I felt a sense of calm and power I hadn't known before, a clarity born from preparation and patience. Later that night, I sent a discreet message to Valentina confirming the final details. She replied with a string of affirmations and updates. Andrew had been spotted entering his office building, oblivious to the storm that awaited him legally. Lena, his mistress, had been briefed on the necessity of her testimony and was ready to cooperate fully. Everything, every cog in the machine of our revenge, was in place. It was almost poetic. Andrew had thought he was the predator, but the prey he had underestimated was now poised to strike with precision and inevitability. I barely slept that night, but it wasn't anxiety keeping me awake, it was anticipation. I imagined Andrew receiving the news, seeing his accounts frozen, the authorities ready to interrogate him. I imagined Lena's testimony exposing his affair and complicity in embezzlement. I envisioned the courtroom, Rebecca presenting our evidence with unwavering authority, Marcus laying out the financial manipulations with irrefutable clarity. And through it all, I pictured myself, calm and composed, the woman he thought he had destroyed, standing with dignity as his world crumbled. Morning came, and with it, a sense of finality. I dressed carefully, ensuring the appearance of fragility, vulnerability, yet inside I felt unshakable. When Rebecca arrived, we reviewed the presentation one last time. The plan was simple in concept but devastating in execution. Andrew would be confronted with his deceit, his financial crimes, and his infidelity all at once. There would be no escape, no denials that could hold up under the weight of evidence. And as much as this was about justice, it was personal. For 8 months I had endured suspicion, fear, and the slow-burning frustration of knowing the truth but lacking the proof. Now all that waiting, all that preparation was about to bear fruit. The drive to the courthouse was quiet, my mind focused. Marcus and Valentina had coordinated with federal agents who would be present to oversee the presentation of evidence against Andrew's hedge fund manipulations. Rebecca had arranged for a judge who understood the urgency of freezing assets in cases like ours. Every detail had been anticipated, every scenario rehearsed. And yet I allowed myself a moment of reflection on what had brought me here. The betrayal, the humiliation, the cold laughter of a man who believed he could control me. That laughter had fueled months of work, months of strategy, months of patience. Every document we presented, every photograph, every record would be a direct consequence of his arrogance. When we arrived, the courthouse felt imposing but familiar, the polished floors reflecting the storm's residue outside. Andrew was already there, accompanied by his attorney, his smug expression betraying his ignorance of what awaited him. As we entered the courtroom, I felt the weight of months of preparation lift slightly, replaced by a focused determination. I would present myself as the wife he thought he had destroyed, fragile and overwhelmed, while the team revealed the depth of his crimes. Every movement was calculated, every expression rehearsed but natural. I was the perfect picture of a woman wronged, but underneath that facade, I held the power to dismantle him completely. The proceedings began, and Rebecca took the lead, her voice steady and commanding. Marcus followed, presenting the financial irregularities with precision, highlighting the transfers to offshore accounts, the forged documents, the misappropriation of client funds. Valentina then presented the evidence of Lena, Andrew's affair laid bare in photographs, messages, and recorded interactions. Andrew's expression shifted from confusion to shock, to panic, and finally to an uncharacteristic silence. He had no words, no explanations that could withstand the barrage of proof. The judge, recognizing the immediacy and severity of the offenses, granted an emergency injunction, freezing all marital assets and awarding me temporary support and exclusive use of the home. I felt a quiet satisfaction, a deep-seated vindication, as the gavel fell and the first wave of justice was served. Outside the courtroom the storm had cleared, leaving the air sharp and bright. Andrew was taken aside by federal agents, the weight of his crimes finally catching up to him. Lena, now cooperating fully, provided testimony that would ensure he faced not only financial penalties but potential incarceration. And as I stepped into the sunlight, the sense of empowerment was overwhelming. For the first time in months I felt unburdened, unstoppable, and completely in control of my destiny. Every moment of preparation, every sacrifice of patience, every ounce of frustration had been worth it. Andrew's lesson had backfired spectacularly, and I was the orchestrator of his downfall, armed with evidence, strategy, and a network of allies who had never doubted me. That day I realized something profound. Betrayal, as painful as it is, can be transformed into strength. When faced with injustice, planning, patience, and the courage to act can turn the tables in ways the betrayer could never imagine. I left the courthouse with a calm sense of purpose, knowing that the storm had ended not just outside but in my life. Andrew's world was collapsing, and mine was expanding. My identity, my agency, my power, they were no longer contingent on someone else's respect or loyalty. I was Amanda Rivers, and I had reclaimed everything that had been threatened by deceit and arrogance. The days that followed were a blur of legal proceedings, media attention, and orchestrated exposure. Andrew's life unraveled with a speed that was almost poetic. The injunction had frozen his assets immediately, and the hedge fund clients he had embezzled from were notified, sending waves of panic through the offices he once controlled. Federal agents arrived at his doorstep, their presence a stark contrast to the security and comfort he had once taken for granted. I watched from a distance the city skyline behind me, as his smugness dissolved into fear and confusion. Every photograph of his betrayal, every document detailing his offshore accounts, every testimony of his infidelity, everything we had prepared meticulously was now being deployed like a weapon against him. I had never felt so powerful, so vindicated, so alive. At home, Rebecca coordinated with the court to ensure the presentation of evidence left no room for escape. Marcus worked alongside federal investigators, explaining every nuance of the financial manipulations, ensuring that the forensic trail was indisputable. Valentina maintained contact with Lena, securing her testimony and ensuring she understood the stakes and the protection she was afforded. Meanwhile, I moved with the calm of a woman in control, presenting the public face of a traumatized, abandoned wife while internally orchestrating the downfall of the man who had dared to leave me in the rain. Andrew had imagined this would break me, make me beg, make me dependent, but the opposite had occurred. His attempt at domination had triggered his own destruction. The courtroom became a stage for absolute revelation. I walked in poised, hair still damp from the storm's symbolic cleansing, eyes clear and determined. Rebecca began with precision, outlining Andrew's deceit and manipulation, emphasizing the deliberate financial abuse and the psychological torment he had inflicted. Marcus presented detailed records, charts, and proofs of his embezzlement and fraudulent transfers. Valentina laid out the timeline of his infidelity, the lies and the betrayals that had been hidden in plain sight. And as Lena stepped forward, her testimony confirmed the intimate betrayals, providing the final pieces that sealed Andrew's fate. I watched him crumble under the weight of evidence. The arrogance, the smirk, the careless confidence are all gone. He tried to speak, to defend himself, but each word was countered by incontrovertible proof. The judge, recognizing the severity and immediacy of the offenses, ordered Andrew's assets frozen permanently pending further investigation, and granted me temporary control of the home, along with support that covered everything he had tried to deny me. Federal agents made it clear. His embezzlement, fraud, and manipulation were being taken seriously, and an arrest was imminent. The man who had thought he could humiliate me and escape with impunity was now cornered, facing consequences he had never anticipated. Outside the courthouse, the media captured the story. The narrative of betrayal and cunning strategy spread like wildfire. Andrew's reputation was irreparably damaged. The mistress, Lena, cooperated fully, turning state's evidence, her prior loyalty to Andrew replaced with a desire to see justice served. Every news outlet highlighted the combination of personal betrayal and financial malfeasance, ensuring the public understood the scope of his deceit. I felt no joy in humiliation for its own sake. Rather, I felt justice, balance, and the satisfaction of watching someone accountable finally held responsible. The transformation in my L of betrayal and channeled them into something productive. With my resources now secure and Andrew's capacity to interfere eliminated, I founded the Phoenix Foundation. Its mission: to empower women who had been financially abused, emotionally manipulated, or trapped in controlling relationships, giving them the tools, support, and legal backing to reclaim their independence. My sister, Jennifer, who had always looked up to me, joined the foundation, contributing her energy and insight. Even Lena, Andrew's former mistress, became a reluctant but dedicated participant, driven by her own desire to make amends and aid in preventing other women from experiencing similar betrayal. The foundation became more than just an organization. It became a symbol of reclamation and empowerment. I spoke at workshops, held seminars, and provided resources for women navigating abusive financial or emotional relationships. I used my story not to dwell in pain but as a blueprint for survival, strategy, and strength. Each success story of a woman leaving a toxic partner or recovering financially felt like a small victory, a reinforcement of my purpose. Every time I helped someone regain control of her life, I felt Andrew's shadow diminish further. The man who had thought he could destroy me had inadvertently inspired a movement, a legacy of resilience, courage, and action. On a personal level, the healing was gradual but profound. I no longer felt anger's raw sting, though the memory of his betrayal remained as a guidepost. I had learned patience, strategy, and the necessity of meticulous planning. I had discovered allies who shared my vision, friends and family who stood by me unwaveringly. And I had discovered something deeper within myself: the capacity to endure, to plan, and to transform suffering into purpose. My life, once defined by dependence and trust in a man who had betrayed me, was now defined by action, empowerment, and a commitment to justice, not just my own, but that of countless women who had suffered silently. As months turned into a year, Andrew's fate was sealed. Arrested and facing charges that spanned financial fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy, he became a cautionary tale, his former world collapsing without the resources or support to rebuild. Meanwhile, the Phoenix Foundation flourished, its reach expanding nationally. I cultivated a network of legal professionals, financial advisors, and support specialists who could intervene and guide women through the labyrinth of betrayal and recovery. The organization became a sanctuary for learning, planning, and ultimately reclaiming autonomy, reflecting the journey I had endured and mastered. I often reflected on that night in the rain, the moment when Andrew thought he had all the power. It had been a turning point, a catalyst that brought months of careful preparation to fruition. His arrogance, his cruelty, his underestimation of me, all of it had become tools in my hands. I realized that life's most painful betrayals can be transformed into opportunities for growth, strategy, and ultimate victory. I had learned to observe, to plan, to act decisively, and most importantly, to never underestimate my own capacity for resilience and intelligence. Through all of it, I remained aware of the deeper purpose: empowering others. Each woman I helped escape financial or emotional control reinforced my belief that betrayal, no matter how devastating, could be transformed into action. I had taken my pain and forged it into a weapon not to destroy, but to protect, to empower, and to ensure that the cycle of abuse and manipulation was broken. Andrew's fall was complete, but my rise was just beginning, a testament to preparation, courage, and the power of turning adversity into lasting impact. I often return to that storm in my memory, feeling the cold, the isolation, the fear. And I smile, because it was the moment that awakened a part of me I didn't know existed. The part capable of meticulous strategy, patient revenge, and transformative justice. The world had tried to break me, but instead, it had forged me into someone unstoppable. My life, my foundation, and the countless women we now support are living proof that strength and justice can emerge from even the most calculated betrayals. I tell this story not just to recount revenge, but to share a message of empowerment. When someone tries to diminish your worth, when betrayal threatens to shatter your life, patience, planning, and courage can transform the situation into your moment of triumph. My journey from abandonment to empowerment, from despair to action, shows that no storm is too fierce to survive, and no betrayal too deep to overcome. I am Amanda Rivers, and I reclaimed my life, my power, and my purpose. Remember, if this story resonates with you, go ahead and like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and comment on your perspectives or key lessons learned. Every story shared is another step toward awareness, empowerment, and strength. Moral lesson: betrayal can feel like the coldest storm, leaving us drenched, vulnerable, and uncertain. But it can also be the catalyst that awakens our inner strength, resilience, and intelligence. My experience taught me that observing, planning, and acting deliberately turns pain into power. Revenge is not always about anger. It can be about justice, clarity, and reclaiming agency over one's life. Surround yourself with allies who understand, protect, and support you. They become extensions of your strength. Knowledge and preparation are tools that can dismantle even the most cunning adversaries, while patience ensures that every step is deliberate, precise, and effective. Most importantly, transforming personal suffering into a purpose greater than oneself, like helping others who face similar struggles, creates enduring impact. True empowerment comes not from destruction alone but from building, healing, and protecting. The storm of betrayal may come unexpectedly, but how we respond defines the trajectory of our lives. Stand firm, strategize, and rise. Every challenge holds the seed of transformation, and every betrayal carries the opportunity to reclaim control, dignity, and purpose.